Member Congressman Eric Swalwell. Congressman, thank you for being here tonight. So with regard to the timings, good to have you. With regard to the timing, you heard the reporting in the open about what Nancy Pelosi reportedly said to the leadership, that there's no time for any more court proceedings, that this vote needs to happen. When do you think that will be?
Well, we've put pressure on ourselves to move fairly and to move fast, and I think we've moved fairly fast. And so we will receive the report from the Intelligence Committee next week, and I'll leave it to the Speaker and the chairs to decide, an exact date.
Do you think it's going to happen before Christmas?
I don't want to put an artificial date on it, but there is an urgency to secure upcoming elections. Voting starts in Iowa and New Hampshire in fewer than 60 days, and this president on the July 25 call invokes one of his potential political opponents when he asked a foreign government to involve itself in our elections. And so there is an urgency to make sure that those elections are pure.
So that sort of seemed to be a new line of argument that we heard today.
I've been saying it for a long time. You can go all the way back to the beginning. I've said this.
That the reason that it has to be done is this overhanging threat that the president is going to do something with regard to the elections. What evidence do you have of that? I mean, why has it sort of evolved to that line of thinking today?
Sure. Well, in the last election, the president said, Russia, if you're listening, hack my opponent's emails. And they actually did just that. They sought to do that the same day that he did that.
We had the Mueller investigation, right? And there was no collusion. So, okay.
But he still did it, and it was wrong that he did it. And I don't think any of us want foreign governments, as the professors laid out today, involving themselves in our elections. So the president himself, with his own ask of the Ukrainians, has created this urgency. And if, sure, the president would say, I will cooperate. I'll give you the 71 documents that you've asked for. I'll give you the 12 witnesses you've asked for. Yes, we could proceed probably at a slower pace. But if he's going to block us, he can't benefit from us moving with the only evidence that we have.
All right. Here's what Jonathan Turley said about rushing in this process. Watch this.
That has not been explained to me. Why you want to set the record for the fastest impeachment?
It would be the fastest impeachment in the history of the country. And there are some reports that there are moderate Democrats who are wary of the speed that this is going, and also of the sort of kitchen sink approach of potentially putting part of the Mueller investigation into this as well. Where do you stand on those two things?
Well, first, actually, let me say, Professor Turley was wrong when he said that. I mean, he's been debunked widely. Actually, on Fox News, some of your analysts today, I saw, debunked some of his claims. It would not be the fastest impeachment. But the issue here, and he points this out, was one, the call was anything but perfect. Professor Turley said that. Two, he said it warrants investigations. He's right about that. But we don't have Republicans who have joined us in these investigations saying, hey, White House, hey, President, turn over these documents, give us these witnesses. I think if we had bipartisan support from them on that, we could maybe slow down and hear more evidence. But we don't.
I think what he was cautionary about, and
we're going to move.
Jonathan Turley, you're going to move. I hear it. Jonathan Turley basically said, if you rush this impeachment, you're going to leave half of the country behind. And he was the first one to say, he said, I would like to hear from John Bolton, from Mick Mulvaney, from Secretary Pompeo. He said everything that you guys have found so far is peripheral to the story. And he believes that because the stakes are so high in overturning an election, that you are going to risk leaving half of the country behind, and that is very dangerous for this process. Does that resonate with you at all?
I wish it would resonate with my Republican colleagues, because they don't agree with him.
I'm asking if it resonates with you.
He was their witness.
Are you concerned about this? Are you concerned about the process, that it's too fast and that people are going to look at you and say, what? Why didn't you take the time you needed?
Yeah. And Mar, that's a fair question. And in Professor Turley's perfect world, the president would turn over documents and give us witnesses, and we could be deliberative in this process. But the president's not doing that, and we have an election coming up. So if you think that the alternative is to let the president ask a foreign government to cheat an election on his behalf, and we just say, well, we're going to wait for you, Mr. President, to do the right thing and perhaps lose free and fair elections, I'm not going to make that trade-off, and I don't think any reasonable person
part of it
would.
is your process, your decision whether or not you want to go through the courts and try to compel those individuals to speak to you, because they are the ones who would have firsthand testimony about what happened in the room and what the president's intent was, other than what he says it was. So, it just feels like that's a very important moment.
Well, his words are pretty powerful.
Let's listen to Jerry Nadler back in 1998. Now, I just want to get your response to this before we go.
We must not overturn an election and remove a president from office except to defend our system of government or our constitutional liberties against a dire threat. And we must not do so without an overwhelming consensus of the American people. There must never be a narrowly voted impeachment or an impeachment supported by one of our major political parties and opposed by the other.
Why was that such a concern back then and not now, Congressman Swalwell?
Yeah. Martha, I was 17 years old, and most Americans who are voting today were not tuned in then, and so I think let's focus on what we have right now. And if you're a small town mayor,
history is no guide, and experience doesn't matter when looking at the past.
But Martha, if I could finish, because it certainly doesn't matter when we make the case to our Republican colleagues. So I'm going to live in the present and say, if a small town mayor in any town in America, anyone watching Fox News today, had the mayor tell the police chief, I'll give you the police officers that you're asking me for to make your streets safer, but only if you investigate my opponent. Everyone would say that's wrong.
But you haven't
and that's
proven
exactly
the
what
quid
the
pro
president
quo,
has done on a much
problem.
bigger scale.
And that's what Turley is saying. He's
We
said you need to stick the landing on the quid pro quo. And his concern was so clear. He's not a Trump supporter. He didn't vote for President Trump. He's been critical of him many times.
Yeah.
But he's saying you need to stick the landing on the quid pro quo. One last response.
We stuck it.
Okay. All right.
We stuck it.
You stuck it. And you're sticking with it.
We stuck it. I'll leave it at that.
All right. All right, Congressman. Thank you. We always appreciate you coming in. Good to see you tonight.
See you again, Martha.